Tennessee Senator Bob Corker, the first to call for hearings on this J.P. Morgan loss. Senator, my only concern here is, are you making much ado about nothing? The firm's still going to make a pile of money. You know, it got in front of this right after it happened. It did not meet, it was not the systemic disaster many thought it would be. So stop it.
Yeah, so look, I've said from day one, this is like 2 months worth of earnings for J.P. Morgan. The riskiest thing any bank can do is to make a loan. And what we all need to ensure is that these institutions are highly capitalized. This one is. This is of no risk to them or to taxpayers or anybody else. But I think what's happened, Neil, this has happened in the middle of a rules process. And just as your last person on was saying, what's happening out there is people are beating their chest and really reacting to perceptions and myths, and they're not reacting to reality. And so what I'd like to do is just have a hearing. Let's understand what kind of trade it was. Let's understand whether they were...
How do you guys settle on hearings? Because I hear, it seems like half the Senate's calling for hearings. I do not besmirch yours. I'm just saying, you got to coordinate it. So do the hearings themselves fuel this argument that it's out of control?
Oh, it won't be out of control. I mean, we have a banking committee, and, you know, we have regulators come in. I assume we'd have a representative of J.P. Morgan, and I think this will be educational. You know, Neil, when we did Dodd-Frank, we had one meeting, one hearing on the Volcker rule, and it was really more of a personality-based hearing where Chairman Volcker, who people respect, came in and expressed his point of view, and that was it. And then it became law. And one of the reasons now that you're seeing the regulators say, wait a minute, this is really complex, we really don't know what to say about this, is because there hasn't been the clarity that the gentleman before you was just talking about. So I think, again...
the gentleman before me, Senator, was worried that maybe with perfectly fine intentions, you guys are going to make this an even bigger mess. You're going to pile new regulations on top of regulations, some of which were supposed to address the very trade in question, but did not.
Yeah. Well, he shouldn't be worried about that from my perspective. I think, you know, again, there are a lot of things being said out there. For instance, one of the things that came out was, well, if the Volcker rule was fully implemented, this trade would not have been permissible. Well, there's a big question about that. And candidly, I think the regulators are divided on that question at a minimum. So, again, I think we need to understand what policies we've put in place, how they interact with the kind of things that just happened at J.P. Morgan. And I think it's very questionable how the policies that we put in place would really affect any of these things. And again, I just would like to have the clarity the gentleman was talking about before. I do think without that, let me tell you what's going to happen. I do think the regulators are going to respond to the high-profile nature of this. And I think they may well do some things that otherwise would not have happened. So this did happen.
Well, they're going to do more. No,
time.
I'll tell you, Senator, you're an expert in how those matters work down there, but they end up doing more harm than good. And for every time they build a better mousetrap and a pricier one, either a more wily mouse or smarter mouse comes along. And then we compound this. And for the 99% of institutions that never have any of these problems, the bureaucracy and the regulations that come along with the new bureaucracy and regulations put them at a competitive disadvantage to the world.
Well, you're singing to the choir. I think you know I did not support Dodd-Frank for the very reason you're talking about. And, you know, it's almost like, Neil, we have almost two separate banking worlds. You have the community banks out there that are just doing very basic standard things. You have these other larger entities that are trying to respond to needs around the world that domestic producers and manufacturers and other companies have. And yet what we've done is applied that regulation to all, and there's no question that it's really crushing community banks around our country. So I couldn't agree more. You're singing to the choir.